Tony Robbins is perhaps one of the country's best-known motivational speakers and life strategists, and during tough times like these, a little strategy can't hurt, and a little cheering as well. Well, Tony was here earlier this morning talking about using fear to your advantage, and now he's back to answer your email questions. Hey, Tony, thanks for sticking around.
Thank you.
Well, let's get right to it, because we've got Lisa in Virginia, and she's trying to stay positive. She writes, "It's hard enough to keep myself positive in the way the markets are going these days, but it's even harder when my husband is very nervous and is making me more nervous too. How do I deal with the situation when I'm having to keep both of us from worrying too much?"
I'd say the first thing you got to do is educate yourself. And what I mean by that is educate yourself about people who've done well in these tough times. Because it's happened before. I mentioned earlier Sir John Templeton, the greatest investor of all time. He made all of his money when markets were crashing. And so I put him on our site, thepowerofcrisis.com. And you can go watch that. Let your husband watch it. You watch it and educate yourself. Second thing is, I've been coaching for 16 years now, one of the top 10 financial traders of all time. He's an amazing man. He writes me every single day. I coach him once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I called him last night because this is a man who in 1987, when the market crashed, he made $500 million that day when everybody's afraid. So let me tell you what he said. He said two things. In the short term, he predicted what was going to happen today. He said, I think we can have some rallies, but he said, I don't think it's the bottom yet. In fact, I think it could go down another 20 to 30%, could even be 40. Now, a lot of people hear that and freak out.
Yeah, that's not very uplifting, Tony.
No, but it is. Robert Prechter is a man who's a friend of mine also. He wrote a book in 1978 where he said the biggest bull market's coming when we were at 800. It's gone 14 times that on the Dow. I called him up and he said, look, Tony, think of it this way. Stocks that were $50 are now selling for 10 or even 5. There's a great chance, based on what happened in the 30s, even what happened in the 70s, some of those will sell for $5. They'll go down to 1 or even 25 cents. But here's what happened in the 30s and in the 70s. In a 6-month period, if you were at 25 cents, it's not going to go back to $50, but it might go to 5. That's a 2,000% return that could happen in 6 months. People need to know that if you stay strong and smart, save your money, be intelligent, this could be the greatest opportunity since you've been alive. Not being positive based on real history.
So what you were talking about then is just having kind of grit. And I think that, you know, we forget how much grit we have.
I agree with you.
Especially because we get so comfortable in the life that we think is going to always stay the same.
That's right.
And what we have to remember is we are human beings who have tremendous grit. And in this country, we've proven that. And it's tough. Now, it's hard, however, to explain this to your children. We've got a good question here from Hannah. She's from Massachusetts. She writes, my children watch the news every morning. How do I make sure that they know what's going on in this crisis, but don't get them scared about their lives and our family's welfare? This is a big issue.
It's a great question. I think you have to understand what we flood ourselves with, we experience. Right now, if you turn on the television, it's bread lines and people saying sell everything, and they even may be right, but for your children, they need resiliency. They need to know there's a compelling future. And the best way to do that, frankly, is not just to protect them, but to show them examples of people that have been through it all. So Casey, who was on your show today, you know, this young man lost his arm, and he's as happy as he can be, totally excited about his life and trying to help other people. So again, I'm not just plugging it, but I created this community called thepowerofcrisis.com. People go there from all over the world, and they share their stories. They were raped and they transformed. They lost everything financially. And at the end of it, they'll tell you how I'm better today. If I know at the time I didn't want it to happen, but if it hadn't, I wouldn't be who I am today. I'm happier, I'm stronger, I'm richer inside. And I think if kids hear enough examples of like that, it starts to stick. Whatever you feed them, they're going to experience. So you've got to feed them those great examples.
My dad always told me that tough times are going to make you stronger.
That's right.
That's always a thing to say. Okay, Roger from New York, he worries that his own worry has gone beyond his control. He writes, what do I do when I feel the fear paralysis that happens when my mind starts to run wild? It seems like there is a cascade of doom and gloom thoughts, and I can't seem to take any action. I just worry. You know, people who are not used to having that emotion are having it these days.
Well, we've all had it at different times of our lives. We just forget. And I think what he has to do is, what's a time in your life that you had an enormous crisis, but what pulled you through? Again, we have people go through on that site and answer 5 questions. And what it basically does is help you figure out, where was this crisis before? You may have even forgotten about. What pulled you through? What belief? What strategy? What experience? Who helped you? What triggered you? And then what did you do that made that shift? But I would also say, remember one affirmation, if you would, in your mind and your body. Own the fact that money is not your life. This is just money. I mean, when I was told I had a tumor in my brain, later on, years later, when I thought I might lose my wife to cancer, I'm going to tell you something. Money doesn't matter at all. But when we get focused on what matters most, we're there. So I mentioned earlier, getting physical is really important because fear is a physical thing. So if you sit around and think about it, not just exercise, going for an intense run, lifting weights, something that pumps the blood and oxygen through you, because when you do that, your entire psychology changes. You see the world through a different place. So I'd say it's contrast of other people's great stories, Model the best that's in you. When have you been through these things before? You've been resilient if you're honest with yourself, and get totally physical and make that a ritual for you. And then you'll start to look for role models of how to turn things around.
Can I add one?
Yes, please.
Hug people.
Oh, I love that. Well, come here.
Come here. Hug people. And just, and embrace human beings who are all around you, and make sure that you're a good friend so that they can be a good friend to you, and you'll feel better.
I think the most important thing you do is get outside yourself. If you go out and try to help somebody else, we have a basket brigade, and we feed 3 million people a year at Thanksgiving from all over the world. And it's because somebody fed my family. When you go out and help somebody else, you realize you have no problems.
You realize how lucky
you are. And you feel like
are.
You have something to give. And we all need meaning in our life. We don't want to just get. The life now is about what can you give. That's what'll light you up.
Tony Robbins, I'm feeling lucky because I got a hug from you today.
Whatever it takes to get you to try harder, read more, set your goals, and go for it. Here's the next attitude disease. Over-caution. Some people never will have much. They're too cautious. Now, you can also be too reckless, but you can also be too cautious. This is called the timid approach to life. And my caution was always the risk. Risk used to drive me right up the wall. I used to say, what if this happens? It's called the language of the poor. What if this happens? And on top of that, if this was to happen, look at the fix I'd be in. I better not try. I could always ace myself out. Then I'll tell you what changed my whole life when I finally discovered it's all risky. The minute you were born, it got risky. If you think trying is risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not trying. If you think investing is risky, wait till you get the tab for not investing. See, it's all risky. Getting married is risky. Having children is risky. Going into business is risky. Investing your money is risky. It's all risky. I'll tell you how risky life is. You're not going to get out alive. That's risky. The Englishman says, well, if that's the way it's going to work out, let's give it a go. Right, that's what it's for. Give it a go. Somebody says, yeah, but I'm looking for safety and security. Fine, then huddle in a corner. We'll cover you with a sheet, bring you 3 meals a day. And we'll protect you, feed you, look after you, care for you. We won't let anything happen to you, and you'll probably live to be 100. The guy said, well, yeah, I'd live to be 100. But what a way to live. Right. What a way to live, safe and secure. Don't ask for security. Ask for adventure. Better to live 30 years full of adventure than 100 years safe in the corner. And see, it's not important how long you live. What's important is how you live. Here's the next attitude disease. We're almost through with this motley list. In fact, we're almost through. Hang on. The next one is pessimism. Pessimism, the deadly disease of always looking on the bad side, the problem side, the difficult side, checking all the reasons why it can't be done. The poor pessimist leads an ugly life. He doesn't try to figure out what's right. He tries to figure out what's wrong. He doesn't look for virtue. He looks for faults. And when he finds them, he's delighted. How ugly. This is the poor guy who looks through the window, doesn't see the sunset. He sees the specks on the window. And this is the poor guy, right, who rushes up, takes such leave of his senses. This guy rushes up and he says, I've got 5 good reasons why it won't work. He's so dumb he doesn't know all you need's 1. He's got 5. To the pessimist, the glass is always half empty. To the optimist, the glass is half full. Why would the same measure affect people 2 different ways? Answer, it all depends on how you look at it. Our lives are mostly affected by the way we think things are, not the way they are. The way we think they are affects us most. There's a subject we don't have time to get into tonight called better thinking habits. One of the major things Shoaff taught me when I met him, he said, poor thinking habits keeps most people poor. Not poor working habits. Most people work hard, but they don't think hard. And Shoaff taught me that the mind is like a factory, a mental factory. And whatever you think about all day long pours ingredients into this mental factory. And that's what builds the economic, social, financial fabric of your life. He quoted me a Bible phrase that says, as you think, so you become. How awesome. When he talked about poor thinking habits, he had me. I used to start the day reading the morning newspaper. I mean, you can believe that or not. I'd get a cup of coffee and read the paper. I'd load up on wars and riots and murders and stabbings and killings and bank robberies and muggings and car wrecks and tragedies. I'd even read the back pages. I seem to like that stuff for some weird reason. I'd load up on all that, and then I'd start the day. You can imagine the kind of days I used to have. You walk around on your financial knees. They call you economic peewee. The guy says, I want to be a great leader. Wonderful. The first thing we do is follow him to his house. When we get there, we walk in and check his library, number one. Somebody says, well, why check his library? The reason is because what a man reads pours massive ingredients into his mental factory, and the fabric of his life is built from those ingredients. You would not believe what some people have got in their house to read. You would not believe. One of the best dressed up words I know for a lot of it is trash. Can you imagine dumping a barrel of trash into this mental factory every day and coming out with a rich, dynamic, positive life? It can't be done. You might as well try making a cake with cement. The kids back in Danbury, Connecticut, high school, they're asking me questions one day. I'm talking to the kids. Kids got good questions these days. One of them said to me, Mr. Rohn, how do you build the good life? I said, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Here's how you build anything. Select the right ingredients, keep out the wrong ingredients, and it starts with thought. Everything starts with thought. So you must be wise and careful what you think about, because that starts everything. You got to be wise and careful. I asked the kids, what would happen if somebody dropped sugar in my coffee? They said, well, you'd be okay. I said, what if somebody dropped strychnine in my coffee? They said, well, you'd be dead. I said, correct. Lesson 1. Life is both sugar and strychnine. You gotta be careful. I said, what if my worst enemy drops in the sugar? They said, will you be okay? I said, what if my best friend, even by accident, drops in the strychnine? They said, well, you'd be dead. I said, correct. Lesson 2. Watch your coffee. You got to be careful. See, it doesn't matter who hands you the bad stuff. It doesn't matter where you get the bad stuff. It'll still do its damage on your bank account, wherever you get it. Mr. Shoaff gave me one of the greatest phrases when I first met him when he said, Jim, every day stand guard at the door of your mind. How important. Stand guard at the door of your mind. And you decide what goes into your mental factory. Don't let anybody just dump anything they want to in your mental factory, because you've got to live with the results. Okay, here's the last disease, and we're through with this list. In fact, we're almost through. Hang on. The last subject is very brief. The last disease, but this one is deadly. Engage in this one, indulge in it even slightly, and you might as well forget the future because it's going to forget you. Complaining, crying, whining, griping. A Bible word called murmuring. See, that'll ace your future. Spend 5 minutes complaining, and you have wasted 5. And you may have begun what's known as economic cancer of the bone. Surely they will soon haul you off into a financial desert and there let you choke on the dust of your own regret. I hope I said that well, so you won't forget. It's a deadly disease. If you don't think it's bad, ask the children of Israel of Old Testament fame. Typical of us all, their story just happened to get in the book. Story says, children of Israel were slaves. God performed a series of dazzling miracles and got them out. And now they're heading for the promised land. Remember the story? Heading for the promised land. Tragedy of the story, they never got there. Reason. From day one, they started to complain. They griped about the water. They griped about the weather. They whined and cried and griped about the food. They griped about the leadership. They whined and cried because it was too far, too cold, too hot, too difficult, too miserable. I mean, they whined and cried for years. Finally, God said, I've had it, trip canceled. Or something like that. The story says they died in the desert, never got to the promised land. Which I think means two things. Indulge in this long enough, you get your future canceled. And I guess it also means even God himself can only take so much. Okay. Just be on the lookout of the things that can destroy all the good you start. The war is on. And this evening, tomorrow, mentally, personally, socially, economically, you got to make sure you're winning the war. And this is part of it.